It's a new day here at the MRS's 50th anniversary spring meeting. MRS TV is here in San Francisco to make sure you don't miss a thing. Today, we're making sure that you have all the info you need to make the absolute most of your time here at the MRS conference. Hi, I'm Thuy Vu, host of MRS TV. At a meeting like MRS, there's such a wealth of opportunity to learn, to network, to engage with so much amazing science, it can be hard to know where to even begin. That's why today we'll be breaking down some of this meeting's can't-miss sessions, events, and programs. From the Women in Material Science and Engineering keynote breakfast, we'll sit down with Annamaria Petrozza to talk about her work in optoelectronics. We'll also give you a glimpse into Symposium X, the daily lunchtime speaker series. Julia Phillips will break down highlights of her session. Plus, we'll talk to award winners Luisa, Whittaker-Brooks, and Yeon Choi about the work that led to their recognition. And of course, our worldwide tour of top materials research will continue with visits to Khalifa University in Abu Dhabi and Rice University in Houston. But before all that, we're going to hear about a great opportunity available to underrepresented ethnic or minority students, the MRS PREM Research Scholars Summit.
MRS PREM is a symposium organized for the scholars of the PREM program, which is an NSF-funded center for the Partnership for Research and Education in Material Science. So these are primarily undergraduate students, and they get to come here for MRS, which is for them most of the time their very first large international meeting, and get to present the science that they're doing during the school year during their scholars program.
The MRS PREM is a summit that is organized for students that are participating in NSF-funded PREM centers, or Partnership for Research and Education in Materials centers, that are present all over the country. These are students that are mostly from underrepresented minority groups who are participating in research and education with the hope of engaging them in careers in material science.
This is a really exciting partnership with NSF because NSF is funding these students, which these students are all from minority-serving institutions. And so these students get to come through this partnership with NSF, again, to present their science and to get professional development training and to be able to network with a larger community of material science researchers, all through the sponsorship and partnership with NSF and MRS.
Well, NSF PREM is a great program. It supports minority students to participate in research and also to advance their careers in materials-related fields.
My hope is that they're able to see themselves in the many examples that they're going to be exposed to. For example, we're going to have a career panel that is going to include a number of scientists and engineers that span all different backgrounds and all different levels. And so my hope is that they're able to see how their career paths could reflect those.
I know by experience that for many students, this is the first time they come to a large research conference, and that it changes everything for them. After this, they would like to continue their studies, continue research, and join the materials research community.
Now, let's head all the way to Abu Dhabi, where Khalifa University aims to facilitate the adoption of graphene-enhanced materials in the UAE and worldwide.
The vision of the Research and Innovation Center for Graphene and 2D Materials is to be a sustainable ecosystem of researchers, innovators, and industrial partners to come and work symbiotically in order to develop and scale up new technologies, products, and processes related to the production and application of graphene and 2D materials.
Our research at Khalifa University focused on the development of green and sustainable polylactic-based membranes, incorporating novel nanomaterials such as graphene oxide and carbon nanotubes for wastewater treatment and desalination-related applications.
The Advanced Digital Additive Manufacturing Center is focusing on design and printing of structural components for various engineering applications. For example, electrodes for batteries, substrates for catalytic converters, membranes for desalination and water treatment.
The Center for Catalysis and Separations brings the expertise on the energy materials design to tackle the emerging challenges in catalysis and separations for energy innovation, such as decarbonization, energy production, as well as the in situ resources utilization in space.
Hi, my name is Luisa Whittaker-Brooks. I'm from the University of Utah, and I won the Early Career Investigator Award. What my group is doing is working on the assembly of two dissimilar materials, these being organic materials and inorganic materials, where we actually bring them together. The issue with these materials is that they are so dissimilar that they actually want to get divorced. What we do is that we modify these interfaces between them in such a way that they want to be attached to each other. When we do that, then we start tuning electronic properties at the atomistic scale. That being either the formation of whole electron pair interactions or charge transfer interactions. So within these whole pair interactions, we form these excitons. In the presence of an electric field, we can break these two and form free carriers, which are actually beneficial for photovoltaic device. Most materials feel very uncomfortable when they're assembled into devices. So what we do is develop operando characterizations that deal with the development of spectroscopy and diffraction tools to understand how these materials are stressed under a device, right? So then that gives us a real-time mapping of how these materials are changing when they're incorporated into devices. As a graduate student, I actually got the MRS Gold Award, and it was exactly 10 years ago. So this is actually really humbling, and I like to serve as an inspiration for people that look like me, because there's not actually a lot of underrepresented minorities within the material science community.
Donate to the causes you care about. The MRS Foundation supports diversity and inclusion projects and programming, early career and student programs, JMR prizes, and more. Every donor is important, and every gift makes an impact. Find out more at mrs.org/foundation.
Thanks to our 2023 MRS Spring Meeting Symposium supporters. Your support of a symposium session helps symposium organizers provide a high-quality technical program and encourages participation from researchers from around the world. Visit the MRS website to learn more about the MRS Symposium Support Program and how you can share in the Society's commitment to the advancement of scientific research.
MRS Presents offers live webinars and workshops throughout the year, providing engaging, educational information on cutting-edge topics in materials research, as well as a variety of career development and diversity and equity events. Join us for our next online event by visiting mrs.org/MRSpresents.
Visit booth 129 in the exhibit hall Tuesday through Thursday to find the MRS journal that meets your materials topic and stage of research. Discuss book publishing opportunities. Meet our editors. Learn about author services and discounted open access for MRS members, and more. And don't forget to take and post a selfie.
MRS offers discounted memberships for those working or studying in developing countries. These memberships are funded by the Materials Research Society Foundation. Visit the MRS website to learn more.
MRS embraces diversity, equity, and inclusion by actively engaging our global membership, supporting the careers of underrepresented researchers, and investing in community actions to address bias and end inequities. In support of the DEI aspiration, in 2021, MRS launched 6 diversifying materials special interest groups. These members-only communities foster networking and community building around common interests. Find out more about these special interest groups by emailing volunteer@mrs.org.
Up next, we head to Rice University, where the Center for Adapting Flaws into Features is working to understand and exploit chemical defects to develop future materials features.
CAFF is the Center for Adapting Flaws into Features. It's a multi-university effort to think about how different features that we perceive as flaws can be turned around into something that's useful to the world.
We've known for a long time that these defects at interfaces can have an outsized impact on either positive or negative outcomes for materials properties and also health outcomes. But what's potentially transformative right now with our center is that we have combined a set of experts to take advantage of the latest, most advanced experimental capabilities that we can image precisely the chemistry that's happening in interfaces that leads to outcomes, as well as computational expertise to use the best supercomputers to be able to understand exactly which structures and conformations amidst the thousands and potentially millions of different conformations can link a particular chemistry to an outcome.
My name is Yeon Choi, and I honorably win the MRS Postdoctoral Award. My research motivation was the limitation of conventional temporary cardiac pacemaker. Temporary cardiac pacemaker is for the patient just after the heart surgery. After some period of time, their heart can be fully recovered, so they do not need to use it anymore, and this is the reason why we call that temporary pacemaker. What I've done is development of the set of material, including the bioresorbable or transient polymer materials with dynamic covalent bond, and a novel device fabrication method for this unusual type of electronic devices. And last but not least, I developed a closed-loop system for autonomous treatment of the patient without human intervention. Around 10 years ago, when I started my research journey as a master's degree course student, I won the MRS Postdoc Award. Because that memory was quite happy for me when I started my postdoctoral period. I dreamed to win this prestigious award, postdoctoral award. But I knew that it was not easy because the selection criteria only considered the achievement during the postdoctoral period. But I thought that if I could win this award, that would be a fantastic culmination of my postdoctoral period and dreams come true. So I'm really happy to be recognized by my peers at MRS, and I think my peers encouraged me to take a step forward at very important stages of my life. Now I like to contribute more to some peers at MRS and this lovely society.
I'm here with Annamaria Petrozza. She is one of the keynote speakers here at the conference. Annamaria, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
You were the keynote speaker at the Women in Material Sciences breakfast. For those who couldn't be there, what did you discuss in your address?
Yeah, so I mean, I must say that this was one of the most difficult talk I have to give in the last
really?
Probably 20 years. Yeah, because I was a bit outside my comfort zone. No? At some point you get trained to give technical talks, but this time I had to think a bit more. I mean, what was the message I really want to deliver? And initially I thought, you know, which are the expectations of what they want to hear from me? But then I realized that actually there is no magic formula, no? So women in material science is not just a category or box. It's a pot of experience, of personal choices, sometimes serendipity, a bit of passion and pragmatism.
That's a lot to try to roll into one speech. I totally get that. A lot of your research focuses on integrating optoelectronic technologies into our everyday lives.
Yeah.
What are some examples of that?
Yeah, I mean, the main playground of the group I'm leading at the moment are metal halide perovskite. So this is actually a huge library of materials. I mean, the first application has been solar photovoltaic devices. And they're really famous for that. But actually, the functionality they can deliver, they are suitable for a different type of optoelectronic application. And one of them, at the moment, we are really exploring, for example, is the development of flexible X-ray detectors. which is something that, I mean, a large area, in terms of large area flexible device is not really existing on the market. And so the idea is really developing something that can be very well integrated in the needs that people are, and without making the electronic too invasive.
Yeah. What are some examples of some of the things it's being used for currently that people would recognize, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this type of detection, for example, you can find in the airport, you can find for medical devices.
Yes.
This type of X-ray detector are used for different type of, from industry, and again, in the medical application, in airport for security. Something that you find everywhere, but I mean, sometimes they need to be customized for the application.
Yeah, that's wonderful. You also won an award from MIT Technology Review for your work with perovskites. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty lucky from this point of view because at the time when the first demonstration of a metal-light perovskite was done in photovoltaic devices. We were really, I mean, working on the topic. We were working on dye sensitized, and they came out of that. And in collaboration with colleagues from Oxford University, we were among the first people demonstrating the nature of, I mean, photoexcitation. So how really these materials were working when absorbing light. And so I can say that we were among the pioneers group in that direction. And the MIT Review Award for really on that type of accomplishment.
Yes, congratulations on that award. Annamaria, Petrozza, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
This Symposium X session is celebrating 50 years of the Materials Research Society and looking back on some of the significant advances in materials research that have happened over that time and the role that MRS has played in those advances. Well, the one that I'm going to emphasize started actually in 1987 in terms of the involvement of MRS. High temperature superconductivity and the superconducting oxides were discovered in 1986. And there was a special session at the spring meeting that year of MRS, another special session at the fall meeting of MRS that year. And then high temperature superconductivity, which came almost out of nowhere. It was very unanticipated. So it was one of those things that really caused a huge stir in the community. Has continued to be a theme in MRS meetings, actually all the way up to the meeting this week. But that's not all. There are also a lot of sort of children of high temperature superconductivity and those materials that have come into MRS and have become very important in materials research. Things like photovoltaics, other kinds of oxides for electronic and optoelectronic applications, and that sort of thing. So it has really given birth to a huge range of materials research topics. I hope that they will see the great spectrum of contributions that have come in materials research over this period of time and the great diversity. I'm only talking about one piece of that, but also how the different pieces fit together. So there are the new materials that have come along, but also the new ways of making materials, of looking at the structure and properties of those materials, and understanding them through the theory and computation. So it's all a very nice circle, and all of those things have to come together to make the advances that we're celebrating, and we'll continue to celebrate for many years to come.
That's it for this episode of MRS TV. Hopefully you've gotten a better idea of all the amazing opportunities that the MRS meeting has to offer. But if you need a refresher, you can keep watching MRS TV on screens around the Moscone Center, on the MRS website, in your hotel room on Channel 67 at the Intercontinental, or on Channel 60 at the Marriott Marquis. And finally on YouTube and Twitter. Tune in to our next episode to hear all about some of the most innovative designs in the materials world. We'll talk to George Maliaras about his work in wearables for neurological disorders and brain cancer, and Kristen Person about her work at the Materials Project. I'm Thuy Vu, and I'll see you then.